On the day of our wedding procession got into a terrible accident. My groom carried his childhood friend, who had only suffered a minor scratch, in his arms to the ambulance. He left me bleeding in my wedding dress on the side of the road. 3 days later, he came to the hospital looking for his bride. The attending physician just laughed coldly. Before walking away, the doctor threw over his shoulder that it might have been a better idea to turn that wedding into a funeral. When our SUV smashed into the concrete barrier, I was still in my white gown. The glass shattered into a million pieces. The front end crumpled as if crushed by a giant invisible hand. My leg was tightly pinned by the mangled seat, and the hem of my dress was quickly soaking with blood. The driver was slumped over the steering wheel, groaning and calling for help. My maid of honor, Taylor, turned pale with horror and rushed toward me. She screamed at me not to move because my leg was bleeding heavily. I looked down. Blood was seeping through the tulle of my skirt, dripping steadily onto the floor mat. Derek jumped out of the car that had been driving directly behind us. I thought his first instinct would be to rush over and pull me out. After all, today was our wedding day. We had been together for 6 years, from our college days to our first real jobs, from renting cramped studio apartments to finally buying our own condo. From the moment his mother first scoffed that I came from a blue-collar family, to the day he finally nodded and said we could just get our marriage license at City Hall, I thought that at least in a moment like this, he would remember I was his bride. But he ran right past me and rushed to the other car. Natalie was sitting in the passenger seat. There was only a small scrape on her arm. Her eyes were red. She leaned against the door and said in a trembling voice that she was terrified and her chest hurt. Derek immediately scooped her up in his arms and began frantically comforting her. Taylor was stunned. She screamed after him, "Derek, Katie is still in the car! She is pinned and bleeding." Derek stopped for a second. He glanced back at me. That look was incredibly brief, as if he were looking at a random passerby. "Taylor, just help her get out for now. The EMTs will be here soon," he threw back. "Natalie has a weak heart. She absolutely can't handle stress." I gripped the car door so hard, my knuckles turned white. Taylor's voice broke with rage. "She just got a scratch. Katie is crushed inside the cabin." Natalie, sitting in Derek's arms, whimpered softly, and tears rolled down her cheeks. "Derek, I am holding you back. Leave me. Leave me? Otherwise, Katie is going to be mad at me." Derek frowned and told her to keep quiet and save her strength. The first ambulance arrived. The paramedics brought out a stretcher. Derek, holding Natalie in his arms, headed straight for the ambulance. I sat in the wrecked car. The wind blew through the shattered windows. A violent, icy shiver took over my body. I called out to him. He stopped by the ambulance doors. "Are you sure you want to take her away first?" I asked, barely able to move my lips. He looked at me with impatience. "Katie, just do not make a jealous scene at a time like this. Natalie's condition is unstable, and you have Taylor and the driver with you." I let out a dry laugh. My lips were chapped, and smiling actually hurt. "I am bleeding, Derek." "I know," he replied. "Just bear with it. Be strong." Those words turned all my physical pain into a hollow, freezing numbness. The ambulance doors closed. The red and blue flashing lights flared before my eyes. Like a tacky string of Christmas lights, Taylor swore viciously, crouched down, and helped me apply pressure to the wound with a cloth. She begged me to hold on and said she had already called 911 again for the fire department and a second ambulance. I did not look in the direction Derek had gone anymore. I pulled my engagement ring off my finger. Derek had picked it out himself. On the inside, there was an engraving with our initials. On the day he proposed, he said he would never let me face difficulties alone again. Now the gold was smeared with my blood. I pressed it into Taylor's palm and asked her to keep it. Taylor, with tears in her eyes, begged me to stay quiet and save my energy. I looked at that ring and thought about how I would need to return it to him. The second ambulance arrived 15 minutes later. As they placed me on the stretcher, the snow-white hem of my dress dragged across the asphalt, leaving a long red streak. Relatives gathered around, whispering. Someone muttered that seeing blood on a bride was a terrible omen. Someone else made excuses for Derek, saying that Natalie had suffered from poor health since childhood. And someone quietly murmured, "Katie is a reasonable girl. She will understand. She won't make a scene over Natalie." I closed my eyes and burned every single phrase into my memory. On the way to the hospital, I started shaking uncontrollably. In the emergency room, the nurse cut open the hem of my dress. The attending trauma surgeon, Dr. Alex Vance, took one glance at the wound and immediately ordered the operating room prepped for stitches. The nurse asked if there was family present. Taylor stepped forward. "I am her friend. I will sign everything." "Where's the groom?" the nurse asked in surprise, looking at the shredded remains of my wedding dress. "He left with another woman." Taylor replied through gritted teeth. "Doctor." Vance cast a heavy look at me, asked no unnecessary questions, and ordered them to prep the wound immediately. As the needle and thread pierced my skin, my fingers trembled from the pain. Taylor held my hand and quietly told me she had called my mom, who was already rushing over. I nodded. The phone on the hospital bed next to me buzzed constantly. The wedding group chat on iMessage was flooded with texts. Derek's mother, Olivia, sent a voice memo in her piercing, overly articulate tone. "Dear guests, please do not panic. The reception is just delayed for now." Natalie got very badly frightened. Derek took her to get checked out. "She cannot be stressed. Katie has nothing serious. You know how brides just get too emotional on their wedding day. Please be understanding." I looked at the audio transcription on my screen and suddenly felt how hilarious it was. I had 7 stitches in my leg. I had severe bruising on my lower back and a suspected concussion from hitting the side window. But in the words of my future mother-in-law, I was just a too emotional bride. I did not reply. I asked Taylor to screenshot every message in the chat and save them. Taylor took the screenshots while cursing, calling the whole family a bunch of worthless trash. "Do not curse, just save them," I said quietly. "They will come in handy later." That evening, my mother, Helen, rushed into the hospital room. She was still wearing the apron from her bakery. Her hands were still white with unwashed flour. As soon as she walked in and saw the thick layers of bandages on my leg, tears burst from her eyes. "Katie, honey, does it hurt badly?" Up until that moment, I had not cried, but hearing my mom's voice made my eyes burn unbearably. However, I refused to let the tears fall. "Mom, I am not getting married," I said firmly. My mom froze. She looked at me, then at the plastic bag in the corner holding the blood-soaked, cut-up dress. Suddenly, she reached out, stroked my hair, and said, "Okay, do not get married. No persuasion, no questions about what people would say, no lamenting that the guests were already gathered." Just those 3 words. And in that moment, I wanted to sob harder than I did at the crash site. Derek did not show up that night. He sent a text message. "Natalie is still under observation on an IV. The doctors are just being overly cautious. Taylor and your mom are with you, so I will come by in the morning. And Katie, please do not make a big fuss over the wedding." My mom's blood pressure spiked. She is very exhausted. I stared at the glowing screen for a long time. Then I silently handed the phone to Taylor so she could take a screenshot. Taylor, clenching her jaw, did as I asked. Then I opened my Chase Bank app. I canceled the $500 monthly automatic transfer I had set up to help Derek's mother. I opened the payment page for the restaurant balance and canceled the transfer. Finally, I went into my contacts and renamed Derek. He was now saved as debtor. Having done all that, I leaned back against the pillow. Outside the window, the emergency room lights glowed. I could hear the wail of sirens as another ambulance arrived. Every day, someone was brought to this hospital, and someone left it. And I, on my wedding day, had finally woken up from a 6-year coma. At 3:00 a.m., the nurse came in for rounds. She saw my engagement ring sitting on the nightstand, sighed, and advised me to get some sleep. "Could you tell me what unit Natalie Smith is in?" I asked. The nurse hesitated. "She is right here in the ER holding area under observation. Nothing serious, just a minor scrape and a panic attack." I chuckled. "And the guy who brought her in?" The nurse lowered her voice. "He is sitting with her. He signed the paperwork as her accompanying relative. Honey, you shouldn't think about unnecessary things. You need to focus on recovering." Of course, I was going to think, but not about why he didn't come to me. I was thinking about where to start settling the score tomorrow. Derek only showed up on the 3rd day. By then, I had already signed my discharge papers. The wound on my leg still hurt terribly. I had to walk with a cane, leaning heavily on Taylor. Doctor, Vance advised against rushing it, but my mom said it would be more peaceful to care for me at home, in familiar walls. And I could not stay in those hospital walls waiting for a man who always chose someone else. Before I was discharged, Doctor, Vance handed me my medical records. Keep the wound dry, change the dressings strictly on schedule. Due to your lower back, strict bed rest. If you get double vision, come straight back to me, he instructed sternly. I took the papers and thanked him. Alex looked at my regular sports jacket, then at the bag with the ruined wedding attire. Do you still need this wedding? He asked suddenly. I shook my head. No. Alex nodded. Good. A person has to learn to live for themselves first. Half an hour after my discharge, Derek literally burst into the hospital room. The nurses later told Taylor that he was still wearing his suit jacket from the wedding. The collar was wrinkled, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Seeing the neatly made, empty bed, he froze. Where is Katie Miller? She was discharged, the duty nurse replied. Derek frowned. Who allowed her to be discharged in that condition? At that moment, Dr. Vance walked out of the doctor's lounge holding medical charts. He looked Derek up and down. She wanted to. Her mother signed the consent. And who exactly are you to her? Derek's face darkened. I am her fiancé. Alex chuckled coldly. Fiancé? What kind of tone is that for a doctor? Derek flared up. Alex closed his folder. His voice was quiet, but the hallway suddenly grew very still. When your bride was brought in wearing a shredded dress, got 7 stitches, and was diagnosed with a concussion, her friend signed the paperwork. While you, at that exact time, carried another perfectly healthy woman into the ER in your arms and signed for her as a relative. And now, 3 days later, you barge into my unit demanding answers and asking, where is your bride? Derek's face turned to stone. Natalie has specific medical needs. It is a special case. I did not abandon Katie. Before walking away to finish his rounds, Alex looked back. You know, it might have been a better idea to turn your wedding into a funeral. Derek was taken aback. What the hell are you talking about? That wedding is exactly what should be buried, the doctor stated calmly. Do not worry, the young lady is alive, healthy, and thankfully, single. When Taylor recounted this scene to me, I was sitting in the back room of my mom's bakery changing my bandages. Taylor did such an artistic impression of Dr. Vance's steely tone that my mom, while pouring me some chicken soup, nodded in approval. Good man, put him right in his place. Right then, my phone rang. The screen flashed at her. I declined the call. When he called for the 3rd time, I pressed answer. His voice was strained with suppressed anger. Katie, why didn't you tell me you were being discharged? We are acting like strangers. I looked down at the fresh bandages on my leg. You were busy. He was quiet for a couple of seconds, then let out a deep sigh. I know how hurt you were on the wedding day, but Natalie was so scared that she had an attack. You know she has childhood trauma from that old car accident. So my torn open leg and massive bleeding do not count as an accident? I asked in a deadpan voice. I did not mean that, he exhaled in frustration. Katie, come on, do not compare yourself to her. You are strong. And who am I supposed to compare myself to? He fell silent. In the background over the phone, I heard a quiet, painfully familiar female voice. Derek, honey, please do not fight over me. It is all my fault. Her voice was soft, but it pricked like a needle. Derek immediately shifted his tone to something tender. Natalie, lie down. You are not supposed to get up. I put the call on speakerphone. Hearing this, Taylor turned bright red with rage. Derek, where are you right now? I asked calmly. He hesitated. In Natalie's hospital room. The doctors said they need to observe her a little longer. I scoffed. A scrape on the arm and a panic attack requires a 3-day hospital stay, while a bride with 7 stitches and a concussion discharges herself. Simply wonderful. Derek's voice turned harsh again. Katie, stop being so toxic. The wedding already went to hell. Everyone is having a hard time right now. Why don't you go home and we will sit down like adults and deal with the fallout? I will handle the fallout myself, I replied. What do you mean? I picked up a heavy folder from the table. Inside were property deeds from the county clerk, receipts from Home Depot, contracts with the restaurant, the wedding planner, the limo rental, and the ring. It means the wedding is canceled and the engagement is broken. It also means I want a full refund for all the money I put into remodeling the condo, the deposits for the banquet, your mother's debts, and those monthly allowance transfers I sent her. We are going to balance the spreadsheet down to the last penny. Dead silence fell on the other end of the line. Then Derek, as if he had just heard a ridiculous joke, let out a nervous laugh. Katie, aren't you tired of putting on this circus? I wasn't angry. When disappointment hits rock bottom, anger simply evaporates. This is not a circus, Derek. This is a pre-litigation demand. This is all just because I took Natalie to the hospital first, he yelled, losing his temper. This is because, I interrupted him, staring at the calendar on the wall, for 6 years, you constantly forced me to push my own needs aside for her. His breathing grew heavy. Natalie has no one. She is an orphan. She only has our family. My father died when I was a child. My mom raised me alone, breaking her back in this bakery. But we never blackmailed anyone with our tragedy. You never used to be like this, Derek said quietly and bitterly. I agree, I replied with a smile. I used to be a very convenient doormat for you. A heavy pause hung in the air. I continued. By 6:00 p.m. today, I will text you an itemized bill, and I will send the ring back via courier. And a quick reminder, I paid the entire down payment for the condo and all the money for the major renovations out of my own pocket. You and Olivia have 3 days to pack up your junk and move out. Derek completely panicked. You want to kick us out of the apartment? Katie, that is our family nest. I don't have a family with you anymore. I hung up. Taylor slammed her hand on the table. It is about time you threw that bastard out. My mom stayed quiet. She pushed the cooling soup closer to me, placed some fresh bread next to it, and said, Eat. You need strength to collect debts. I lowered my head and started eating. The hot steam hit my face. I suddenly remembered a day 3 years ago when we were applying for the mortgage. Derek had looked away and said his finances were tight, promising to contribute to early payments later. His mother, Olivia, had pursed her lips and declared, Katie, don't be so petty. You are going to be a family. The condo should be registered in both your names equally. In marriage, everything is shared. I stood my ground back then and put the deed solely in my name. Because of that, my mother-in-law walked around for half a month with a sour, pursed mouth, complaining to all the relatives about how materialistic I was. Later, she changed tactics, pressuring me with the "we are one family" routine, and smoothly manipulated me into paying for the entire renovation, ordering the furniture, and even paying off Derek's credit card debt. I had kept a record. Only back then, I logged those expenses in a family budget notebook, dreaming of our future. Now, I had compiled them into a spreadsheet to prove a point. I wasn't the broke freeloader who, as Olivia loved to say, came into their family looking for a free ride. That afternoon, I sent Derek the spreadsheet of expenses. Item 1. Down payment for the condo $86,000. Paid from the personal account of K. Miller. Item 2. Renovations $23,700. Furniture and appliances $16,420. Item 3. Deposit for the restaurant, wedding planner, limo service, and photographer. Total $21,300. Item 4. Payment for private clinics, medications, and monthly living allowance transfers for O. Davis over the last 2 years. Total $13,500. Item 5. Compensation for physical injury resulting from a traffic collision caused by unauthorized alteration of the convoy route will be calculated separately after the official Highway Patrol report. Derek read the message but did not reply. However, 10 minutes later, his mother unleashed a storm in the Davis family group chat. My dear relatives, please judge for yourselves. On the day of the wedding, a minor fender bender happened. So our little princess stuck her nose in the air, ran away, refuses to come back, and on top of that, slapped us with a bill for tens of thousands, claiming we robbed her. My poor Derek, he is so unlucky to have gotten mixed up with such a calculating, cold-blooded snake. I watched the screen calmly. Taylor peeked over my shoulder. Are you going to reply? Absolutely. I nodded. I sent the first receipt to the chat, the bank transfer to the restaurant, then the second, the contract with the construction crew, then the third, the bank statement showing the $86,000 withdrawal. I kept dropping documents until dead silence fell over the chat. Finally, I typed, Olivia, this bill is not a woman's tantrum. This is the official withdrawal of investments in your family due to the cancellation of the wedding. A minute later, Derek's aunt jumped into the fray. Katie? Sweetie? You cannot be this immature. Nobody wanted an accident. Derek, being a man, just took care of a weak girl in an emergency situation. Why air dirty laundry with all these pieces of paper? I didn't bother arguing with her. I simply took a photo of my hospital discharge papers and sent it to the chat. The document, stamped with a blue hospital seal, clearly read, laceration of the left lower leg. 7 stitches applied. Severe contusion of the soft tissues in the lumbar region. Concussion. Kept under observation. The chat was immediately flooded with confused ellipses. Then, I sent a photo of Natalie's medical note. Taylor had managed to snap a picture of it at the nurse's station. Superficial abrasion on the back of the left hand. Situational anxiety. Rest recommended. Taylor, sitting next to me, burst into silent, shaking laughter. The contrast was absolutely brutal. Derek's mom quickly deleted her first message with the insults, but the screenshots were already safely in my folder. She immediately changed her tune. Oh, well, who understands all these medical terms anyway? Natalie has been fragile since childhood. For her, a scare is worse than any scratch. Katie, you are an adult, reasonable woman, practically a member of the family. Just be wiser. Let it go. Reading these accusations that I should be wiser and let it go, I felt nothing but wild absurdity. Natalie was only a year younger than me, but from the very day Derek and I started dating, everyone in his family forced me to babysit her. If Natalie said she liked the wedding bouquet I chose, my future mother-in-law would sigh. Katie, it is just a small thing for Natalie. Pick another one for yourself. Do not be greedy. If Natalie said she wanted to ride in the car directly behind our lead car, Derek would beg. She gets carsick easily. Let her ride close by. It will give me peace of mind. On the eve of the wedding, Natalie suddenly felt anxious and lonely, and Derek stayed on the phone with her until 2:00 a.m., leaving me alone in the hotel room to double-check the guest lists. Back then, I convinced myself it was just empathy. But now I understood it wasn't about my wisdom. It was about their boundless audacity. I sent a diagram of the wedding convoy route to the chat and wrote to Olivia, I am not Natalie's mother, nor am I her nurse. Her place in the convoy and the route were agreed upon in advance, and I will very soon find out exactly whose brilliant idea it was to change the approved route right before a road construction zone. After that message, Natalie herself appeared in the chat for the first time. Katie, forgive me, this is all my fault. I am begging you, do not be mad at Aunt Olivia and Derek. I swear I didn't want you to get hurt. Attached to the message was a photo of her arm wrapped in a bandage. The camera angle was chosen so dramatically that the tiny band-aid looked like wrapping for an amputation. Immediately, the sympathetic aunts in the chat started coddling her. Poor girl. Katie, don't be so aggressive. Both of you got hurt. I didn't explain a single thing. I just sent a photo of my wedding dress, soaked through with fresh blood. Taylor had taken that photo at the ER doors. I was sitting in a wheelchair. The hem was sliced open by surgical scissors. My shin was wrapped in a thick layer of gauze soaked in crimson red, and my face was as white as chalk. The group chat went dead. About 10 minutes later, a distant relative who rarely posted cautiously asked, That injury looks horrifying. Derek, did you seriously leave your bride in that condition and not go with her? No one answered, because the truth was too ugly. Finally, Derek came online. Katie, stop discussing our private matters in public. Your mother was the first one to write here that I was a materialistic snake running away with your money, I countered. She was just overly worried. And were you worried when I was bleeding out inside twisted metal? Or were you only worried about how fast you could carry someone else in your arms? After sending that, I hit leave group. Taylor clapped her hands. Bravo, Katie. That was magnificent. My mom, standing nearby, frowned. They are not going to just let this go, sweetheart. My mom was right. At 4:00 p.m., Olivia, dragging two loudmouth relatives with her, stormed into our bakery cafe. It was the afternoon rush. People were sitting at the tables. The moment she crossed the threshold, she started wailing at top volume, drawing the attention of the entire room. "Good people, look at this. A terrible accident happened on my son's wedding day, and this daughter-in-law, instead of uniting with the family, slaps us with bills and demands money, as if we didn't marry off a son, but took out a payday loan." The customers started turning around. My mom stepped out from behind the counter. Her face was hard. "Olivia, stop putting on a circus in my establishment." Derek's mother immediately pointed a finger at my mom. "It is you, Helen, who raised your daughter poorly. She wants to skin us alive, steal our apartment, and this is after we paid for part of the wedding and gave you money." I leaned on my cane and slowly stood up. A sharp pain in my leg made me freeze for a second. Taylor tried to jump up, but I stopped her with a gesture. Step by step, I walked up to Olivia. "You gave $8,800, I said loudly, so the whole room could hear, "of which you took $6,000 back on the exact same day, claiming Derek's cousin urgently needed money for his business. The remaining $2,800 went to the deposit for the photographer. Do you want me to print out the Chase Bank statements right now and tape them to the front door?" My ex-mother-in-law's face broke out in red splotches. The customers in the cafe began openly whispering. "I personally paid the deposit for the restaurant, the wedding planner, and the limo rentals, down to the last penny," I continued. "Your family only bought a case of champagne and 2 cases of vodka for the morning after. And even for that, your son asked me to Venmo him half because he miscalculated his budget." Taylor immediately pulled copies of the receipts from her folder and slammed them onto the nearest table. Olivia's relatives reached for the papers, but Taylor barked, "Keep your hands off, or remember, you'll be the ones paying." Olivia escalated to a screech. "We are one family. Why are you so meticulously counting every penny?" I looked her dead in the eye. "We are no longer a family." As soon as I said those words, a ringing silence fell over the cafe. The theatrical despair on Derek's mother's face was replaced by genuine shock. Are you seriously canceling the wedding?" She narrowed her eyes maliciously. "Who is going to want you at 28, burdened with the disgrace of a canceled wedding? You are basically a divorcee." Suddenly, my mom grabbed a wet rag off a table and hurled it violently into the stainless steel sink. The crash made everyone jump. "My daughter is not merchandise on a market for someone to want her," my mom stated in an icy tone. Derek's mother stepped back. I was taken aback, too. My mom had always avoided conflict, spending her whole life trying to be polite. All these years, she had silently swallowed Olivia's subtle jabs about our lack of wealth. She had always taught me to smooth things over. But now, she stood in front of me. Her voice trembled slightly, but she did not yield a single inch. "Olivia," my mom said, staring her down. "My little girl was bleeding out in her wedding dress, and your son did not give a damn about her. Yet you have the nerve to come into my business and throw tantrums here. If you have a shred of conscience left, pay back your debts and get out. And if you don't, I will personally file a police report against you for trespassing, harassment, and slander." From among the customers, a man noted quietly, "Wow, the groom's family has zero boundaries." Olivia couldn't handle the public humiliation. She shook a finger in the air, yelled, "You are going to regret this!" and bolted out the door, dragging her relatives behind her. "The only thing I regret is that I didn't open my eyes sooner," I shouted after her. When the door closed, my mom turned to go to the kitchen. I noticed how badly her hands were shaking. I walked over and hugged her. My mom lowered her head, hastily wiped away her tears with her apron, and whispered, "Katie, I used to think that if we just endured a little, stayed quiet, everything would work out, that you'd get used to it and find love. But now I realize that with some people, the more you endure, the more they wipe their feet on you." I squeezed her hands. "We are not enduring anything anymore, Mom." That evening, Derek drove up to the bakery. He didn't come inside. He stood under the streetlight. When I walked out, leaning on my cane, he stared at my bandaged leg. True. Unfiltered panic finally flashed in his eyes. "Does it hurt a lot?" he asked hoarsely. "Get to the point," I snapped. His Adam's apple bobbed. My mom shouldn't have come and made that scene. I apologize for her. Then let her apologize herself. He took a step toward me. Katie, is this really how our 6 years are going to end? Over one mistake? I looked at him. The streetlight cast a long, jagged shadow on the pavement. I had loved this man for 6 years. I knew he had bad acid reflux, that he hated cilantro, that whenever he lied or got nervous, he rubbed the bridge of his nose, and I knew that every single time he was about to defend Natalie, he would say my name with a specific, pleading tone. Katie, come on, be reasonable, Katie. Natalie has it so hard. Katie, do not put me in an awkward position. Those words used to tie me hand and foot, drowning me in guilt. Now, those chains had rotted away and crumbled. It is not a mistake, Derek, and I am not the one making a scene. I am simply demanding my money back. Derek covered his eyes with his hand. Please, can we just hold off on the eviction from the apartment? My mom has a bad heart. She absolutely cannot handle stress right now. I let out a short laugh. The same thing over and over. What is so funny? He frowned. The fact that the second I mention my physical wounds, you bring up Natalie's mental trauma. The second I mention my money, you hide behind your mother's blood pressure. Everyone in your family has special circumstances, and I am the only one obligated to be an ironclad punching bag. Derek's face turned pale. He opened his mouth to object, but the phone in his pocket vibrated. Natalie's photo flashed on the screen. He answered on autopilot. A broken sobbing came through the speaker. Derek, honey, my hand hurts so much. The doctor said there might be a scar. What if I can never play the piano again? Derek tensed up immediately. Natalie, calm down. I am coming right now. As soon as he said it, he caught himself, remembering that I was standing right in front of him. He looked at me. A pathetic awkwardness flickered in his eyes. Katie, I will find you later, okay? I nodded. Go. He froze, clearly unaccustomed to my calm demeanor. Go, I repeated. And starting today, I added, you no longer need to report your visits to her to me. It is none of my business anymore. On the 4th day, I went to my condo to grab the rest of my important documents. The apartment was in a nice, quiet suburban neighborhood. A spacious 3-bedroom. I had saved up for the down payment for 5 years, plus my mom sold my grandmother's cabin to cover the rest. Derek swore at the time that he had just gotten promoted, and his entire paycheck was going toward his car loan and professional certification courses. I believed him. The only thing I didn't yield on was putting the title strictly in my name. Olivia had nagged me endlessly about it. Now I understood you have to protect yourself from people like them legally, not morally. Taylor drove me. As soon as I unlocked the door with my key, a sickly, sweet, unfamiliar perfume hit my nose. I stopped in the hallway. Taylor sniffed the air too, and her expression instantly changed. The door to my master bedroom was cracked open. Natalie was sitting at my vanity. She was wearing a very expensive white silk robe, the exact one I had bought specifically for the getting ready photos. Her hair was down, there was no trace of a panic attack on her face, and she was eagerly trying on my gold earrings in front of the mirror. Seeing my reflection in the mirror, she shrieked and jumped up. Katie, what are you doing here? I slowly let my eyes run over my robe on her shoulders. This is my apartment. She flushed bright red and immediately slapped on the mask of a hunted victim. Derek, let me rest here for a little bit. I couldn't sleep at the hospital because of the stress, and the apartment was empty anyway. Taylor exploded. You put on someone else's bridal lingerie, dug through someone else's jewelry box, and you call that resting? Natalie's eyes instantly filled with tears. I didn't know these were your things. I was just so cold after my shower. I grabbed the first thing I saw. I walked past her in silence and opened the closet. My bridal coat was roughly balled up and shoved into a corner. Meanwhile, Natalie's dresses hung in perfect rows on the hangers. On my nightstand, her lotions, cosmetics, and pink gym water bottle were lined up like soldiers. This wasn't a temporary refuge. She had essentially moved in. I pulled out my phone and started recording a video of everything. Natalie lunged at me, trying to cover the camera lens with her hand. Why are you filming? Stop it! Gathering evidence for the police, I answered calmly, keeping the phone up. Breaking and entering, trespassing, and destruction of private property. She went pale. Katie, what horrible things are you saying? Derek and I grew up together. He just got scared like a brother that there was no one to take care of me. And so this brother moved you into my premarital apartment. Into my bed, I clarified. She bit her lip and went silent. The front door slammed. Derek rushed in. Apparently, Natalie had managed to text him. Flying into the bedroom and seeing me with the camera, his face turned purple. Katie, what are you doing now? I wordlessly pointed a finger at the silk robe on Natalie. Take it off. Right now. Derek frowned, stepping in front of her to block my view. Katie? Come on. Natalie is unwell. Why are you humiliating her over some rag? I stared at him, amazed at how blind I had been, at how masterfully he twisted reality. If Natalie took someone else's belongings and the owner demanded them back, it was called humiliation. It is not a rag, it is my personal property, I said, enunciating every word. And taking someone else's property without permission in this country is called theft. Natalie burst into loud sobs, burying her face in his shoulder. Derek, I swear I didn't know. I was just so cold. Derek stroked her hair and spat viciously at me. It is just clothes. I will pay you for it, since you are so petty. I put my phone in my pocket. Perfect. Designer silk robe, 120. The Egyptian cotton bed sheets she slept on, $260 for the set. Total, $760. Zell it to my number right now. Derek stood frozen. Taylor, standing in the doorway, barked out a laugh. Natalie also stopped whimpering. She clearly hadn't expected me to do the math. Derek's face twisted with indignation. When did you become so calculating? I pulled up my bank's QR code on my phone screen and shoved it in his face. From the exact moment you carried her in your arms to the ambulance, leaving me to bleed out. Send the money. He looked at me like I was an alien. I didn't break eye contact. Finally, breathing heavily, he pulled out his phone and transferred the money. Maybe he felt ashamed in front of Taylor. Or maybe he was actually scared I would call the cops. Hearing the notification chime, I opened my suitcase and began packing the important documents from my safe. Taylor expertly sorted the folders with the pre-construction contracts, the county clerk property deeds, and the contractor invoices. Derek shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. His tone suddenly turned pleading. Katie, please. Let's not start a war over the apartment. Natalie will move out in a couple of days, I promise. And when we cool down a bit and set a new date at City Hall, we will sit down and discuss everything calmly. I froze over my suitcase and slowly straightened up. Derek, do you genuinely think I am just pouting and playing hard to get? He blinked in confusion. Are you not? I let out a bitter laugh, dug into a folder, and pulled out a folded piece of printer paper. It was a draft of a prenup. 6 months ago, Olivia had casually slipped it to me just to read. Written in black and white was a clause stating that after the marriage, I would take on part of Derek's personal debt. The apartment would be legally recognized as marital property despite being purchased prior to the marriage, and my mother-in-law would receive the right to indefinite residency. I had been outraged back then and refused to sign it. Now, this piece of paper was the best proof of how rotten they were. I threw the paper at his chest. Your mother asked a lawyer friend to draft this garbage, didn't she? Derek caught the paper. His ears turned red. She was just worried about the stability of our future family. Stability? I sneered. A stability where I pay for the mortgage and renovations. Your mother lives here rent-free, and you bring your perpetually sick little girlfriend into my master bedroom. Do not drag Natalie into this. Oh, is she not standing in the middle of my bedroom wearing my robe right now? Silence fell over the room. Natalie shrank against the doorframe, turning pale, then flushed. I zipped up my suitcase. As I walked past Natalie, I stopped. She looked up at me, eyes brimming with tears. Listen closely, I said right to her face. If you need Derek so badly, take him. You don't have to fake heart attacks anymore. You don't have to call me sweet Katie, and you don't have to steal my things. You are not a weak, sick girl. You are just greedy and completely lacking morals. Tears rolled down her cheeks. That's not true. Derek exploded. Shut your mouth, Katie. Natalie already feels guilty enough. Why are you making up disgusting lies about her? I pulled the velvet ring box out of my pocket, opened it, and slammed it down hard on the dresser. The gold, which Taylor had scrubbed clean of my blood, gleamed coldly. Returning this? I snapped. Derek's eyes darted to the ring. Are you serious? I pulled a pre-printed official eviction notice from my bag. This apartment is my sole property. You have exactly 3 days for Olivia to move her junk out, and your little orphan needs to pack her bags and roll out of here right this second, or I am calling dispatch to send a patrol car. Derek stared at the paper, as if finally realizing the script had been broken and he was no longer in control. Katie, we need to talk. Without them, we have already said everything. You can't be this cruel. I gave him a long look. When I was sitting in that mangled car, feeling the blood pouring down my leg, watching the doors of your ambulance close. That is when you made me this cruel. With those words, I rolled my suitcase toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Natalie's muffled wailing. Derek did not follow me. When the elevator doors closed, Taylor gently touched my shoulder. Does it hurt? Yes. She went to hug me, but I lifted my head. It hurts, but I don't regret a single thing. That evening, Natalie, playing the ultimate martyr, posted a black and white photo on Instagram. It showed her hand with a neat little band-aid. The caption read, "Sometimes circumstances are stronger than us, and some misunderstandings are impossible to explain. I only hope that people will stop spreading hate and find a drop of kindness in their hearts." Mutual friends immediately started blowing up my phone with screenshots. In the comments, people were writing to Natalie, "You are too kind. Throwing tantrums over a scratch on her own wedding day is a clear diagnosis of a psycho bride." I silently downloaded all the screenshots into a folder on my laptop labeled Defamation Suit Materials. Taylor, sitting nearby with a glass of wine, asked, "Are you going to reply to that trash in the comments?" "No," I smiled. "Let them dig their own graves deeper. In court, these screenshots will be worth way more than likes." On the 7th day, I went to the orthopedic clinic for a follow-up. The wound was closing, but putting weight on my leg was excruciatingly painful. As Dr. Vance removed the old bandage and saw me gritting my teeth so hard they squeaked, he let out a faint scoff. "If it hurts, you are allowed to say, 'ouch.' I am not authorized to hand out medals for stoic silence." I exhaled through my teeth. I am used to enduring it. As soon as the phrase left my lips, I froze. Alex looked up at me. "Do not be used to it anymore, Catherine," he said calmly but with intense weight. That short phrase struck my heart harder than all the comfort my mom and my friend had given me. Taking my new medical note, I walked out into the hallway and bumped face to face with Natalie. She was sitting in a hospital wheelchair, and Derek was carefully pushing her down the corridor. The bandage on her arm had grown in size. Now an ace bandage covered almost her entire forearm. Her face was caked in a layer of pale powder, her lips completely colorless. From a distance, it looked like she had just been taken off a ventilator. Seeing me, Derek braked on autopilot. Natalie spoke first. "Katie, are you here to get your bandages changed?" I ignored her and tried to walk around the wheelchair, but she suddenly grabbed my sleeve with her good hand. "Please, do not blame Derek," she whined, loud enough for the whole hallway to hear. That day, he was just so terrified for my heart. I've been begging him to go to you, to ask for forgiveness, but he was too scared to leave me alone. I looked at her claw-like fingers. "Take your hand off me." She theatrically snatched her hand back as if she had been burned, shrinking into the back of the wheelchair. "I know you hate me," she trembled, "but I didn't get into that car on purpose, and I had no idea you were hurt so badly. Why are you making me out to be a monster to all our friends?" People waiting in line for the doctors started turning around to watch us with interest. Her voice was plenty loud enough for a free public performance. I leaned on my cane and looked down at her. "Natalie, do you honestly think that if you squeeze out a tear first, no one will bother checking the facts?" She turned pale. I am not making anything up." "Perfect. Let's talk about the facts." I pointed to her arm, wrapped all the way to the elbow. "Exactly how severe is your injury?" Derek stepped forward, blocking her. "Katie, you are crossing a line. Stop this interrogation." I turned around and walked over to the open door of the doctor's lounge. "Doctor, Vance was filling out logs at the nurse's station." "Dr. Vance!" I called out loudly. "Dr. Vance, tell me, is a patient named Natalie Smith legally allowed to publicly disclose the medical report regarding the injuries she sustained that day?" Alex glanced briefly at Natalie over his glasses. With her written consent, of course. Animal terror splashed in Natalie's eyes. I nodded. In that case, I will disclose mine. I pulled my discharge summary and examination sheet from my bag and slapped them onto an empty table near the station. For everyone present, I announced loudly, so the entire corridor could hear. My injuries as a result of the crash: a deep laceration to the lower leg, 7 stitches applied, severe soft tissue contusion, and a concussion. I turned to Natalie. If you believe I have slandered you on social media, show everyone your medical note. What does it say? Amputation? Compound fracture? Onlookers began to gather. Natalie bit her lip until it turned white. Tears poured down her face. I am not a domineering drama queen like you. I just want to recover in peace. Recover in peace? Sure. But spreading rumors about me on the internet? No, I snapped. Derek put his hands on her shoulders. Enough, Katie. She might have a permanent scar on her hand. Is that really not enough for you to show a single drop of sympathy? At that moment, Dr. Vance's voice rang out from behind the counter. With an absolutely unbothered, professional tone, he stated, "Superficial abrasions of the epidermis generally do not affect limb function and do not leave keloid scars. Changing a standard Band-Aid on time is sufficient." Derek froze. Natalie blended in with the color of the wall. Alex, never changing his tone, delivered the finishing blow. According to the initial examination records from our emergency room, patient Smith was diagnosed with a mild scratch measuring 1 inch. There are absolutely no medical indications for a wheelchair or total wrapping of the arm at this time. Deafening silence fell over the hallway. The older women who, just a minute ago, were gasping and pitying Natalie, suddenly pursed their lips and began whispering in a completely different tone. At that moment, Taylor, who had come to pick me up, walked over. Hearing the end of the scene, she let out a loud scoff that echoed down the hall. Wow, riding in a wheelchair for a scratch, while walking with a cane for a stitched-up leg. Natalie, you should apply to Juilliard. Such a massive talent is going to waste. Natalie lifted her head and looked at Derek with the eyes of a beaten dog. Derek, I put you in an awkward position again. Let's get out of here. I do not want treatment. Derek immediately crouched down in front of the wheelchair. Do not talk nonsense, Natalie. We will go see a different doctor. Looking at this nauseating scene, I suddenly caught myself thinking that it no longer hurt. The wound on my leg stopped throbbing, and my heart stopped aching. Just a month ago, seeing him tenderly wipe away her tears, I would have gone insane with jealousy, cried into my pillow, and blamed myself for not being good enough. Now, I felt nothing but disgusted exhaustion. I grabbed my papers, turned around, and headed for the exit. Derek jumped up and took a few steps after me. Katie. I stopped. Was it really necessary to humiliate Natalie in public like that? He asked reproachfully. I slowly turned around. Derek, to this day, you still only see that your little friend is uncomfortable, and you point-blank refuse to see that I nearly bled out because of you. His breath hitched. I am not trying to humiliate her, I added in an icy tone. I am simply dragging the truth into the light. And the truth, for people like you, always looks humiliating. I walked out of the hospital and got into Taylor's car. My friend pulled a thick manila folder out of the glove box. Here, a little more truth for the light. I stopped by the police precinct. I opened the folder. The convoy route. Originally, we were never supposed to take Oak Boulevard, where road construction was happening. The limo company confirmed that an hour before departure, someone dropped a new location pin into the convoy group text. I flipped the page. A printout from the lead driver's text messages. 9:17 a.m. Natalie. Derek, honey, I think I left my pill organizer at the florist on Oak Boulevard. Can the cars make a tiny detour? I'm terrified I'll feel sick at the reception without my medication. 9:19 a.m. Derek. Mike, driver. Take a detour through Oak Boulevard. 9:20 a.m. Olivia, in the chat. Right. Natalie's health is more important than any silly superstitions. We are turning around. 9:22 a.m. Mike, driver. Derek. There is roadwork on Oak. The lane's narrow. We could get stuck or scratch the cars. 9:24 a.m. Natalie, it's just for a couple of minutes. Today is Katie's special day. I don't want anything to go wrong because of my heart acting up. Taylor smirked darkly. In the end, everything went wrong. I stared at Natalie's text, my fingers balling into fists on their own. Mike gave a statement, Taylor continued. He told the officer he absolutely did not want to drive there, but since the groom, who was paying the bill, and his mother insisted, he had to obey. Did they get the meds? I asked hollowly. Taylor shook her head. The detective called the florist. Natalie never forgot any pill organizer there. Nobody ever came to pick one up. I looked out the window. On the clinic steps, Derek was helping Natalie roll her wheelchair down the ramp. Natalie clung to him, looking like a fragile flower broken by the wind. But she wasn't a flower. She was a sharpened knife. And Derek was the one who had driven that knife under my ribs with his own hands. When the traffic investigator officially called us in to review the crash, Derek finally realized things were about to get serious. That evening, he called me 5 times. I didn't pick up. On the 6th try, he sent a massive text block. Katie, I am begging you. Let's not blow this out of proportion before they determine fault. Natalie didn't ask to change the route on purpose. She was genuinely scared for her heart. Let's meet up and talk, I replied shortly. We will meet at the police station. I only believe facts. The next morning, Taylor and I arrived at the precinct. Derek was already nervously pacing the hallway. Natalie wasn't there, but Olivia had rushed over. Seeing me, my ex-mother-in-law instantly went on the attack. Katie, are you seriously going to drag us through the courts? The accident was a shared tragedy, and you are trying to ruin my son's life over some scratch on your leg. I walked past her as if she were thin air and sat down on a chair. Derek guiltily glanced at my cane. My leg. It is better we only talk in front of the detective, I snapped. He slumped. We were called into the office. The diagram of the crash was simple. After entering the construction zone, a car in front of the convoy slammed on its brakes before a concrete barrier. The convoy rear-ended each other in a chain reaction. Our lead car took the worst hit. I was in the back right seat. The metal buckled and sliced my leg open. The detective's main question was simple. Why did the convoy deviate from the route approved in the contract? The driver, Mike, a solid guy in his 50s, walked into the office. He nervously twisted his baseball cap. Officer, I explained this. I didn't change the route. The groom radioed me. We need to make an emergency stop to grab pills from the florist. I warned them about the roadwork, but the groom told me his friend's health was more important than the schedule. Derek frowned. I was just worried she would have a panic attack. Mike nodded. Yeah, that's exactly what he said. The detective asked to submit the text message logs as evidence. The printouts were laid on the desk. Olivia, peeking at the papers, immediately started rambling. Officer, the poor girl was just scared. Natalie has very fragile health. The meds were a matter of life and death. I silently placed the official response from the florist owner on the desk. On the day of the wedding, no one came looking for a pill organizer, the detective read aloud. Furthermore, there is no record of one in the shops lost and found. Derek picked up the piece of paper, and his face slowly began to break out in red blotches. Olivia immediately scrambled for an excuse. Well, the girl just got confused from the stress. It happens to everyone. I shot her an icy glare. Because of her confusion, a whole convoy got smashed up. Your precious Natalie got away with a scratch and left in an ambulance like a VIP, while I, with a torn open leg and a concussion, was left to bleed out on the side of the road. And you think the word confused is enough for the law? What do you want? Olivia screeched. For her to get on her knees and beg? I don't need your knees. I will be demanding compensation for bodily injury and financial damages from the liable parties in civil court. Derek's head snapped up. You are going to sue Natalie? Not just her. I paused, looking him dead in the eye. You too. A ringing silence filled the office. Derek recoiled as if he had been physically slapped. You were the client who rented the cars, I continued in an even voice. You gave the driver a direct order to alter the route, ignoring the safety warnings. And you also violated the state penal code for reckless endangerment and failure to render aid when you abandoned me in a wrecked vehicle. Olivia jumped up so fast she knocked her chair over. Have you completely lost your mind? Suing your own fiancé? Ex-fiancé, I corrected. Derek's face turned gray. Katie, are you seriously going to escalate this to criminal charges and lawsuits? You led me to this yourselves, step by step. He clenched his fists until his knuckles cracked. Yes, I admit, I panicked that day and I handled it wrong. But understand this, if Natalie had actually had a heart attack and died, I would have blamed myself for the rest of my life. I stared at him. And what if I had died? He stayed silent. He couldn't answer that question, because in his twisted coordinate system, Natalie was always in first place, and I was just somewhere in the background. On the way out of the precinct, Derek caught up with me in the parking lot. Katie, wait! I stopped, leaning heavily on my cane. Please, let's not take this to court, he pleaded. The canceled wedding. Fine, I accept it. Payouts for the cars. Your medical bills. I will find the money. We can settle this. But no courts. My mom cares deeply about her reputation at the school where she teaches. She won't survive the humiliation. I laughed. It was a bitter laugh, entirely devoid of joy. So, to spare your mother from humiliation, I was supposed to quietly endure my injuries? I didn't mean it like that, he muttered. You never mean it like that, but the finale is always exactly the same. I have to clean up the mess of your actions. Derek's eyes were red. You used to understand me. I used to be a convenient idiot, I snapped and got into my Uber. That afternoon, $5,000 landed in my bank account via Zelle from Derek. The memo read, Advance compensation. Katie, please do not be mad. Let's talk. I immediately initiated a return to the sender and resent the Excel spreadsheet to him. This is not a payoff for my emotions. This is legal liability. Please pay strictly according to the itemized invoice, or I will see you in court. He didn't reply. That evening, realizing that pleading with me wasn't working, Olivia decided to launch another psychological attack. This time, in the HOA Facebook group for our condo building, she posted my photo and typed out an essay. Neighbors, feast your eyes. This piece of work ran away from my son's wedding, and now she is trying to evict us from our apartment and is demanding tens of thousands. Look at how materialistic girls are these days. They put the deed in their name before the marriage, milk the groom's family dry, and at the first sign of trouble, they abandon their husband. When I opened the group, a massive argument was already raging in the comments. Some people were gasping and calling me a bitch. Others were pitying the poor woman. I didn't bother typing out furious replies. I called the property management company and requested an official ledger of my HOA dues. Then, I uploaded 3 screenshots to the Facebook group. The property deed from the county clerk showing me as the sole owner, the bank wire transfer for the down payment from my personal account, and the official eviction notice served to the Davis family. I added one single paragraph to the photos. Dear neighbors, this apartment was purchased by me prior to any marriage, using strictly my personal funds. The Davis family has not invested a single dime into this property, holds no equity, and is not listed on any lease agreement. I ask Olivia to cease her public defamation against me immediately, as per state law regarding libel. Otherwise, I will attach screenshots of this group to my civil suit for defamation of character. The HOA group went dead silent. 5 minutes later, one neighbor commented, Wait, so it's the girl's apartment? Then why is the mother-in-law acting so entitled? Let them move out. Another neighbor added, I heard from someone who went to the wedding that the groom left the bleeding bride in a smashed car and ran off carrying some other woman in his arms. The tide of public opinion turned instantly. Olivia started frantically deleting her comments, but my screenshots were already safely tucked away in the correct folder. Taylor, who was watching all this unfold, shook her head. You've gone completely ice cold, Katie. I looked at the dark screen of my phone. It is not about being ice cold. It is just that I finally understand the rules. You can't step back. I used to take a step back, hoping they would appreciate my compromise. But they always viewed my step back as an invitation to step forward and hit me harder. The next day, the manager of the restaurant called me. Hello, Catherine. Mr. Davis just informed us that you two reconciled and your wedding is being rescheduled for this Saturday. The format will be a celebratory banquet for relatives. Could you confirm if you will be wiring the remaining balance from your account like last time? I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Who told you about a reschedule? The manager sounded confused. The groom's mother, Olivia, said the couple just had a little spat, but the banquet is happening this Saturday. I scoffed. They had decided to stage an ambush to pressure me in front of the entire extended family. The wedding is officially canceled, I said firmly. I will not be paying the remaining balance. My deposit is forfeit according to the contract. But we already sent out confirmations to the groom side of the guest list. The manager panicked. That is the groom side's problem. An hour later, I got a text from Derek. Katie, all our relatives are gathering at the restaurant on Saturday. I am begging you to come. We cannot end everything over text messages. Whatever compensation you demand, I will pay it, but please, let's discuss it with the family. I quickly typed a reply. I will be there. Taylor, finding out about this, bugged her eyes out. Are you insane? Going alone against that whole mob of relatives? They will eat you alive and guilt trip you into dropping the lawsuit. I won't be alone, I answered calmly. And the only thing I'm worried about is that they won't all show up. On Saturday, I wore a strict black sheath dress. The wound on my leg was still throbbing with pain. I walked slowly, leaning on an elegant black cane, but kept my back perfectly straight. Taylor walked beside me. And on my other side walked Sarah Peterson, a sharp, ruthless attorney in her 40s, highly recommended by customers at my mom's bakery. After reviewing my folder of evidence, Sarah had only said one thing. This case is 100% a win. Just make sure you do not switch back into good girl mode during negotiations. Inside the restaurant, the wedding decorations hadn't been taken down. The red carpet, the lavish photo wall of white roses, framed photos of Derek and me sat on the tables. Only, in one photo, my face was half covered by a crooked bouquet. The moment the three of us stepped inside, dozens of pairs of eyes locked onto me. Olivia, flashing a fake, radiant smile for the relatives, instantly rushed up to me and hissed in my ear. Katie, all the elders of the family are here today. Behave yourself. Don't say anything stupid. Give Derek a chance. Leave yourself a way back. I measured her with a cold stare. I came here today to burn this bridge to the ground. Her smile melted away. Derek stepped down from the elevated floor. Seeing my black dress, he grimaced. Katie, why black? We are here to reconcile. This is the color of mourning for a family that never happened. I answered loudly, his face twisted. Just don't make a scene. We wanted to discuss this calmly. I gestured to the rows of arranged chairs. You wanted an audience? Let's discuss. Natalie was here too. Wearing a soft baby blue dress, she sat in the front row, hands neatly folded in her lap. A tiny beige band-aid decorated her hand. Seeing me, she immediately jumped up. Katie, I came to personally ask for your forgiveness. I don't need your apologies. I need your share of the financial compensation. I cut her off. An indignant murmur swept through the guests. One of the aunts whispered loudly, Hear that? Always about money. The tables are set, and she is still throwing a tantrum. No wonder Derek was stepping out on her. Limping slightly, I stepped onto the small stage and took the microphone from a very confused MC. Derek rushed toward me. Katie, what are you doing? I looked out over the silenced room. Since the Davis family decided to gather you all here under the guise of a wedding, you can be witnesses. I pulled the velvet ring box out of my purse and set it on the edge of the table. Next to it, Sarah dropped the heavy binder full of contracts. Today is not a wedding banquet. Today is the official termination of the engagement and the collection of debts. An unimaginable uproar erupted in the hall. Olivia, her face contorted with rage, lunged at the stage, trying to snatch the microphone. You little tramp! You are humiliating us! Sarah stepped forward and firmly blocked her with an outstretched arm. Ma'am, keep your distance. I am the legal representative for Catherine Miller. I am her attorney. If you lay a hand on anyone, I will add assault to the lawsuit. At the word attorney, the room instantly shut up. I opened the binder. Let's start with the wedding expenses. Deposit for this beautiful restaurant, $8,000. Paid from my personal account. Retainer for the wedding planner, $3,500. Paid by me. Premium limo rentals. $2,800. Paid by me. With every number I called out, Taylor used a projector to display the corresponding scanned receipt with a blue bank stamp on the massive plasma screen. These weren't the empty words of a bitter bride. They were ironclad documents. Olivia opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water, but the heavy stares of the relatives burning into her back forced her to stay quiet. I turned the page. The apartment where the Davis family planned to build their family nest. Down payment. $86,000. Major renovations. $23,700. Furniture and appliances. $16,420. Financial contribution from the Groom's family. $0.00. Someone in the crowd gasped loudly. The aunts who, a minute ago, were calling me a materialistic bitch stared down at their plates. Derek's face turned the color of ash. "Katie, enough please," he croaked. "I didn't want to humiliate you. But you humiliated me constantly." I raised my voice. I kept reading. Over the past 2 years, as a fiancé, I paid for medical checkups, spa retreats, and sent monthly living allowances to Olivia, totaling $13,500. She used to convince me this was an investment into our future, close-knit family. Now the engagement is broken. Under state law, I demand the return of these funds due to unjust enrichment. My ex-mother-in-law couldn't take it and shrieked for the whole room to hear. "That is a lie. You gave that to me as a gift." "Voluntarily." I nodded. "Yes. Voluntarily. Back then. But after you went into our HOA Facebook group and publicly accused me of stealing your money, I became obligated to clarify to your family exactly who was profiting off whom." One of the men in the crowd scoffed. "Olivia, you really lost your damn mind. The girl buys you a house and you drag her name through the mud?" Olivia flushed red, then pale, clutching her chest. Natalie suddenly jumped up from her seat. I don't understand anything about your money. But Derek truly loves you, Katie. You can't destroy 6 years of your life over pride." I looked down at her. "You might not understand money, but you certainly understand planning convoy routes." The tears on her face dried instantly. I nodded to Taylor, and the traffic diagram, along with the text message screenshots from the driver, appeared on the screen. On the day of the wedding, the original route bypassed the construction on Oak Boulevard, I stated, enunciating every word. Natalie, under the pretext of a forgotten pill organizer for her heart, demanded a detour. The driver warned of the risk of an accident. Derek ordered him to drive anyway. Olivia approved it. And yesterday, the owner of the florist gave an official statement that there was never any pill organizer to begin with. An absolute bomb went off in the room. The relatives began loudly voicing their outrage. Natalie backed away, stammering, I got confused. I was really nervous and confused. Did you go back to the store to get it? I asked harshly. No. And after the crash, when you had a tiny scratch and Derek was carrying you to the ambulance, did you tell him that I was crushed in the metal and bleeding out? Tears burst from her eyes again. I was so terrified. I couldn't see or hear anything. You were terrified, so you clung onto another woman's groom for dear life. And Derek was terrified, so between two women, he chose to save the one whining the loudest. Everyone in this family was allowed to be scared and panic. I was the only one obligated to be strong and understanding. Derek stood near the stage, his chest heaving heavily. Katie? He exhaled, defeated. I picked up the ring box and opened it. Derek, I took this ring off my bloody hand on the day of the crash. Now, I am returning it to you. I placed the velvet box on top of the stack of receipts. As of today, our engagement is terminated. Vacate the apartment within 72 hours. All payouts must be made according to the pre-litigation demand my attorney will serve you. Liability for the crash will be handled with those responsible. I paused, looking into his eyes, which were brimming with despair. You no longer have to force me to understand. Poor little Natalie. You no longer have to force me to tolerate your mother's behavior. I am no longer your convenient bride. The banquet hall grew so quiet you could hear the hum of the kitchen exhaust fans. Derek stood there, shoulders slumped, as if all the blood had been drained from his body. He looked at the ring, but didn't even reach out to take it. Olivia, recovering from her shock, launched one final attack. "You humiliated us in front of the whole family. You are not a human being. You are a soulless calculator." I brought the mic to my lips. "Olivia, do you want me to put the audio memo on the speakers? The one where you called my torn-open leg bride's over-emotional behavior?" She shut up instantly. One of Derek's older relatives walked up to her and bluntly shut her down. "Olivia, be quiet. You're already up to your neck in it. It's a disgrace." My ex-mother-in-law looked around in horror. The family had always been on her side before. She was an absolute master at crying and telling tales of how I manipulated her poor boy. But against bank statements and police reports, tears didn't work. Suddenly, Natalie clutched her chest. "Derek, I feel sick. I can't breathe," she groaned, starting to slump into her chair. Derek flinched instinctively toward her. I saw it. The whole room saw it. And Derek himself realized it. He stopped midway, turning even paler. Genuine, unfeigned tears of panic poured from Natalie's eyes. "I really feel sick. I'm not faking it." I stayed quiet, but Taylor, standing by the projector, let out a ringing laugh. "Natalie, honey, don't rush to die just yet. If you feel sick, call 911. The clinic is across the street. Just don't ask Derek to carry you this time, or the relatives might think you're the bride." Laughter rippled through the room. Natalie turned red down to the roots of her hair. She looked at Derek and squeezed out in a trembling voice, "Derek, are you mad at me?" This time, Derek didn't comfort her. He slowly shifted his gaze from the screen, which still showed the diagram of the ruined convoy route to her face. "What is this story about a fake pill organizer, Natalie?" he asked hollowly. I swear I just got confused," she stuttered. "You have never once in your life confused your medications," he replied in an icy tone. Natalie's eyes darted around. "Derek, are you suspecting me? We grew up together. Don't you know what kind of person I am?" She had used that manipulative phrase a million times. In the past, Derek would have folded. But right now, under the crosshairs of dozens of eyes and undeniable facts, he could no longer pretend to be a blind idiot. I nodded at Taylor. Another screenshot appeared on the screen. It was an iMessage group chat. Not a secret wiretap, not a hack. On the eve of the wedding, Natalie simply texted the wrong group. At 11:30 p.m., she had asked the vendor group text if she could be assigned the car directly behind ours, because being far from Derek would trigger a panic attack. The wedding coordinator had replied that the car was reserved for the bridal party. And then, Natalie fired off a message meant for someone else. Whatever, it's easy to push that idiot Katie aside. If Derek chooses me in a critical moment, she will finally understand who is more important to him. Natalie deleted the message a minute later, but the coordinator managed to screenshot it and sent it to Taylor. Taylor hadn't paid much attention to it at the time, dismissing it as petty teenage jealousy. But after the crash, that screenshot took on a completely different meaning. The screen glowed brightly. Natalie completely froze. Derek stared at the line of text. His lips trembled. "You wrote this?" Natalie turned as white as a sheet. "I had a breakdown. I wrote it out of anger, in the heat of the moment." "It wasn't in the heat of the moment," I said evenly. "You were testing him. You methodically tested his boundaries. All these years, you tested whether he would make me change my bouquet for you. You tested if he would run to you in the middle of the night before our wedding. You tested if he would change the route for your whim. You tested if he would rush to save you, leaving me to die. And you know what?" I paused, looking straight into Derek's ghost-white face. "Every single time, he chose you." Natalie shook her head, crying. No, that's not true. But it is not just her fault, Derek." I addressed my ex. "She reached out, and you let her hang on your neck. She whined over a scratch, and you ran to her, forcing me to swallow my hurt. Nobody deceived you, Derek. You genuinely wanted to play her savior at my expense." After those words, Derek's face was completely drained of blood. He opened his mouth to make an excuse, but couldn't force a single sound out. Someone in the crowd, one of the uncles, summarized it loudly. That's not childhood friendship. That's deliberately sabotaging a wedding. And the groom completely lost his mind, leaving a bleeding girl in a wreck. Good for Katie for dropping them. The mood of the relatives shifted permanently. They looked at the Davis family with blatant disgust. Olivia slumped heavily into her chair, her lips trembling. It seemed that for the first time in her life, she realized her trailer park tantrums weren't going to work anymore. Sarah Peterson stepped forward, placing the official demand letters on the table. Derek, Olivia, I am officially notifying you that the eviction from the premises, the recovery of unjust enrichment, wedding damages, and compensation for bodily injury will be pursued in civil court. And if you continue to spread defamation regarding my client, we will see you in criminal court as well. Derek didn't look at the documents. He didn't take his bloodshot eyes off my face. Katie, what if I admit every mistake? What if I pay back every single penny? Then you will simply have faced the deserved punishment, I scoffed. We can start all over. Silence fell over the room again. Natalie flinched as if she'd been struck with a whip. Olivia began to fidget in her seat. I looked at Derek and realized something strange. Had he asked me that question a month ago, I would have burst into tears of happiness. Even the day before the wedding, I would have laid down strict ultimatums regarding Natalie and his mother, but I would have stayed. But right now, standing in front of me was a pathetic, total stranger. He didn't want to start over out of some grand love for me. He was panicking because he lost control. Because I was no longer waiting for him in the evenings, no longer paying for his mother's whims, no longer babysitting Natalie, no longer funding their comfortable lifestyle. His illusion of a perfect life had shattered. Your remorse, Derek, is not going to be a new beginning for me, I answered calmly. I set the microphone on the edge of the table, turned around, and limped toward the exit. Just as I was about to push the doors open, Natalie hysterically screamed at my back. You won! Are you happy with what you've done to us? But Derek will still never forget me. I slowly turned around. She was no longer playing the little sister. Her makeup was smeared. Her eyes held pure, unadulterated hatred. I don't need him anymore, I answered with a light smile. You don't have to fight me for him. Just take whatever is left of him. Saying that, I pushed open the heavy restaurant doors. Outside, the bright spring sun blinded me. The suffocating hall with its fake roses was left behind. And I never looked back once. After the ruined banquet, pure hell broke loose in the Davis family. Olivia tried to cry in the family group chat, complaining that I hired a shark lawyer to leave them penniless. But one of Derek's brothers harshly replied, Olivia, everyone saw the receipts. Don't embarrass yourself any further. Just give the girl her money back. Then, she typed out a tear-jerking Facebook post about how cruel daughters-in-law are these days. In the comments, one of her own coworkers asked, Did the groom's side put a single dime into that apartment? The post was deleted 10 minutes later. Derek started bombarding me with texts. He wrote that they were packing up and moving out. He promised to deal harshly with Natalie. He admitted he had been a piece of garbage and begged to just meet for coffee. I didn't read a single message. In the past, the moment he texted, "Let's talk," I would drop everything and rush to listen to his excuses, which always boiled down to me needing to put myself in his shoes. Now, that was over. The president of our HOA informed me that the Davis family had ordered a U-Haul. Before turning over the keys, Olivia tried to haul out the Viking fridge and Maytag washer that had been bought with my money. The vigilant building security guard stopped the movers. They called me. I ordered them to check the appliances against my receipts. My ex-mother-in-law screamed into the guard's phone that I was choking over a washing machine. I replied over speakerphone. That is my property. Take nothing but your own underwear. She threw her phone in a rage. That afternoon, she dragged herself into our bakery. This time without her entourage, just her sister. It was rush hour. My mom was wiping down the counter. Olivia walked in, flopped down at a table. Her eyes were red, looking completely haggard. Helen, let's talk. Mother to mother, she whined. The kids had a fight, it happens to everyone. But we, the adults, shouldn't add fuel to the fire. Katie is young and hot-headed. Someone needs to knock some sense into her. The wedding got canceled. It's a disgrace to the whole town. Who is going to marry her with baggage like that? I walked out of the back room. My mom doesn't need to knock sense into anyone. Seeing me, Derek's mother instantly plastered on a fake martyr smile. Katie, sweetie, I understand your resentment, but it's not easy for Derek right now either. He lost so much weight. He's depressed. You can't just erase 6 years with one lawsuit. Watch me, I snapped, sitting down at the table. The smile slid off my ex-mother-in-law's face. She looked pleadingly at my mom. Helen, tell her, it's hard for a woman to live without a strong man's shoulder. If Katie sues and makes scandals, she'll only ruin her own reputation. My mom neatly folded her damp rag. You know, I used to think that too, she said calmly. Hope flared in Olivia's eyes. Which is why, whenever my daughter was mistreated in your family, I always asked her to be an understanding daughter-in-law, my mom continued, her voice turning to steel. When you turned up your nose at our poverty, I endured it. When you milked my daughter for living allowances, I endured it. But I endured it exactly up until the moment my daughter was brought to the hospital in a bloody dress, while your precious son carried a healthy girl in his arms. Olivia's lips trembled. That was an accident. Derek just got confused. And what happened after the accident? My mom asked without raising her voice. You came into my cafe to cause a scene. You called my daughter a thief in her HOA group. You tried to steal her appliances when moving out. You didn't come here to make peace, Olivia. You came here because you are terrified of the lawsuits, and you decided to pressure Katie through me. My ex-mother-in-law's sister tried to interject. In-law, why are you being so rude? We are not in-laws. Thank God they never signed the papers. My mom slammed down the final word. Get the hell out of my bakery, or I am hitting the panic button for ADT security. I have cameras and witnesses everywhere. Olivia turned green with rage. She jumped up, nearly knocking the table over. At the door, she turned around. If you drag Derek through the courts, he will never look your way again. That is my wildest dream, I smiled. The door slammed shut. My mom held her proud posture for a few seconds. Then her legs gave out, and she sank heavily into a chair. I ran to her. Katie. My mom pressed her hands to her chest. Was I too harsh on her? You were magnificent, Mom, I laughed, hugging her. She laughed too, and then her eyes grew red. Sweetheart, I was so afraid people would laugh at you over the canceled wedding. But now I realize. To hell with people. If you had married him, you would have been crying for the rest of your life. Everything is going to be fine, Mom, I promise. That evening, Sarah Peterson prepared 3 packets of documents. We strike on 3 fronts, the attorney stated sharply. 1. Eviction and possession of the property. 2. Return of unjust enrichment and wedding damages. 3. Civil suit against the at-fault parties of the collision, plus a claim for defamation. We will agree to a pre-trial settlement if they reach out, only on the condition of full payout of the itemized bill, written apologies, and immediate vacating of the condo. No 10-year payment plans, I answered strictly. Sarah nodded approvingly. Excellent attitude. Our evidence is ironclad. Time is working against them. For the pre-trial settlement meeting, Derek arrived half an hour early. He was in a wrinkled white dress shirt, unshaven with deep shadows under his eyes. Next to him sat his mother, her lips pressed into a thin line. Natalie dragged herself in too. She was no longer playing the invalid, there was no massive bandage, just a flesh-colored band-aid on her hand. Seeing me, she instinctively hid her hand under the table. My attorney, Sarah, opened her laptop. A neutral mediator read out the demands: wedding compensation, return of transferred funds to the mother, and liability for the crash. Olivia immediately went on the defensive. We already moved out of the apartment. We didn't take anything of yours. What more do you want from us? Sarah impassively read from a paper. Viking refrigerator, Maytag washer, Sealy mattress, all purchased by my client. You hired movers in an attempt to steal this property, which was recorded by building security cameras. The fact of attempted theft does not negate liability. We demand you sign a notarized agreement banning you from approaching the premises and compensating us for legal fees. Derek's mom choked on air but stayed quiet. They moved on to the crash. Natalie, sniffing, took the floor. I admit I asked to change the route, but I didn't do it on purpose. My heart really did hurt. I suffered in that accident too. Taylor, who was sitting next to me, snorted coldly. I looked at Natalie. The store owner confirmed there was no pill organizer. The text logs with the driver prove you demanded the detour, knowing about the roadwork. Witnesses Taylor and the driver confirm they screamed at Derek about my bleeding, but you told him you were having an attack and pulled him to the ambulance. Natalie trembled. It was loud. I was in shock. I didn't hear what Taylor yelled. Sarah Peterson placed the driver's statement on the table, along with the wedding planner's statement featuring that specific screenshot from the group text. Every word in those statements landed like a heavy stone on Derek's shoulders. He finally lifted his bloodshot eyes to me. Katie, forgive me. Silence hung in the conference room. Those are words you should have said back there, on the highway, next to the wrecked car, I replied evenly. He swallowed hard. I know. But it won't change anything now. Olivia panicked. Derek! Do not cave to her. She just wants to squeeze us dry. Derek suddenly whipped his head toward his mother and barked so loudly the windows rattled. Mom, shut up! My ex-mother-in-law shrank into her chair. It was the first time in my memory that he had ever told his mother to shut up. If it had happened a year ago, I would have rejoiced. But now, this delayed awakening wasn't worth a dime. The negotiations lasted 3 hours. Ultimately, the Davis family capitulated under the weight of the evidence. A settlement agreement was signed. Derek's family agreed to hand over the keys and stay away from the condo. Olivia would publish an official retraction of her slander in the Facebook groups. The damages for the ruined banquet and the planner's fees were divided proportionally. Derek would pay the bulk. Natalie carried joint liability for the physical damages in the crash, since the initiative to change the route came from her. As they were signing the papers, Natalie turned to Derek. Tears in her eyes. Derek, are you really going to make me pay this 20 grand settlement? I don't have that kind of money. Derek looked at her with a heavy, cold stare. You are directly at fault for the crash. You will pay. Natalie shrank away from him as if he were a leper. You never used to be like this. I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. Derek flinched and looked at me. See, Derek, I said. She also thinks you went bad the second you stopped paying for her whims. I took my copy of the agreement, stood up, and headed for the exit. Derek caught up with me by the elevators. Katie, I will pay everything on time. We will never set foot near the condo again. And Natalie? I cut off all contact. I pressed the elevator button. That is your life. Do whatever you want with it. Unbearable pain reflected in his eyes. Do you really not care at all anymore? I looked at the digital floor display. I remembered the wail of the sirens. I remembered him throwing over his shoulder. Natalie's condition is unstable. Just bear with it. Once I cared very much, Derek, but it died that day on the side of the road. The elevator doors opened. He stepped forward, screaming desperately. What if I throw you a new wedding? I'll earn the money, I'll buy a better ring. I will choose only you. I turned back to him. I don't need a wedding, Derek. I need a man who, in the moment I am bleeding out, will run to me first, not someone else. And that man will never be you. The doors closed, leaving him standing in the empty hallway. A week later, the restaurant told me I could come in to sign the final paperwork for my refund check for the deposit. I arrived on a weekday. The hall was empty. The wall of white roses was half disassembled. Wilted bouquets lay sadly in the corner, like a bad joke that ended in tragedy. The manager handed me the refund check and gave a customary apology. It's not your fault. I shook my head. The manager hesitated. Mr. Davis is out there. He asked me to tell you he's waiting for you in the parking lot. I walked outside. Derek was standing by his car, nervously smoking. He had lost a lot of weight. His cheekbones were sharp. In his hands, he was clutching that same velvet ring box. I know you don't want to see me, he started hoarsely. But I have to say what I should have said that day. I genuinely wanted to spend my whole life with you. I wasn't lying to you. It's just, I was so used to Natalie being weak, that she had no one to protect her. I thought you were strong, that you would understand. I forgot that you needed me too. You didn't forget. I answered coldly. It was just convenient for you not to notice. He turned pale. When I carried Natalie to the ambulance, I swear I didn't think you were hurt that badly. Taylor was screaming it for the whole street to hear. And you heard her perfectly fine. I thought you could handle it, he whispered, lowering his head. I scoffed. You know, Dr. Vance was right. That wedding really should have been turned into a funeral. Derek's head snapped up. Horror filled his eyes. We buried this wedding, Derek. And we buried us. A single lonely tear rolled down his cheek. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry. I used to think that if he ever cried over me, I would forgive him for anything in the world. But right now, I looked at him like a bad actor in a cheap movie. Katie, why are you being so absolute? People make mistakes, he asked, his voice breaking. Because you didn't just make one mistake. You methodically chose her for 6 years. She wanted a spot in the convoy, you pushed me aside. She was lonely at night, you abandoned me. Your mother extorted money from me, you made me endure it. The wedding day just shone a spotlight on it. I refused to be benched on the sidelines of my own life anymore. I pulled a property handover document from my bag. This is the final paper. Wire the settlement money to my account and never call me again. He took the paper with trembling fingers. Is this really all that is left of our 6 years? Just these papers? Not just that. I looked down at my leg, where a fresh scar hid beneath my pants. There is also a scar on my leg. His breath hitched. I turned around and walked to my car. Katie! He shouted desperately after me. Tell me honestly, if I had picked you up first that day, would we be standing here right now? I stopped for a second, without turning around. No, he seemed to exhale with relief, but then I added, if you had chosen me then, all the hell that happened afterward simply wouldn't exist. You killed us yourself. Absolute silence fell behind me. I walked out of the parking lot onto a street flooded with spring sunshine. My mom was waiting for me in the parking lot by the bakery. She was leaning against her trusty old Honda crossover. The trunk was filled with fresh groceries from the farmer's market. Katie, let's go home. I made a pot roast with potatoes and carrots, just the way you like it, and baked some fresh rolls. Smiling, I walked over to her, got into the passenger seat, and reached over the console to hug her tightly. I used to ride shotgun like this with her when I was a kid. Back then, I thought that when I grew up and put on a white dress, I would have my own real home with a dependable man. But now I realized, a home isn't a stamp on a marriage license or a ring with an engraving. A home is the person who, when you are in pain, drops everything and asks, "Sweetheart, where does it hurt?" A month later, my final bandages were removed. All that was left was a pale pink scar on my lower leg. Dr. Vance nodded with satisfaction during the final checkup. It's healing beautifully. The scar will fade over time, but it won't disappear completely. A cosmetic defect will remain. Let it stay, I smiled. It's an excellent reminder that you should never tolerate someone else's audacity until you bleed. Alex chuckled, taking off his gloves. That reminder cost you quite a bit, but it works flawlessly. That afternoon, the first major settlement payment landed in my account with the memo. From D. Davis. No extra words, no apologies. That evening, Olivia published a dry, official retraction in the HOA and family Facebook groups, exactly the text drafted by my lawyer, Sarah Peterson. She admitted to defamation and publicly apologized for lying about a runaway, money-stealing bride. I couldn't have cared less how sincere she was while typing it. The main thing was that no one would ever dare drag my name through the mud again. Natalie fell off the radar. Taylor told me a secret. Natalie and Derek had an explosive, massive fight when he forwarded her the bill for her share of the wrecked cars and my medical expenses. She threw a fit, screaming that he wasn't a real man if he made a weak girl pay. Derek cursed her out and blocked her everywhere. But honestly, I had zero interest in how those spiders ate each other in their jar. When I returned to the bakery, my mom was rolling out dough for croissants. Above our entrance hung a beautiful new sign, Helen and Katie's Bakery. Mom said we were a team now, and my name belonged on the storefront. I sat down at the register and pulled that cut-up wedding dress out of a bag. On the snow-white lace, dark brown bloodstains were still visible. They hadn't come out at the dry cleaners. I didn't throw the dress away. I took a pair of scissors, cut off a small, clean piece of white lace, and glued it to the first page of our new bookkeeping ledger. At the top, I wrote today's date, and below it, I added just one line. As of today, I will no longer call humiliation a compromise. Taylor walked in. Seeing me writing, she came over and curiously peeked over my shoulder. Oh, a new accounting book for a new life? What are we logging for item number 1? I looked out the window. The midday sun was flooding the street. Pedestrians hurried about their day. Someone was laughing. Someone was drinking coffee on the go. There were no more toxic group chats, late-night mother-in-law tantrums, or manipulation from a fiancé on my phone. I slowly closed the ledger and gave my friend a happy smile. We are logging net profit. I finally got my freedom.